All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Excel at Excel Love Data Week session. My name is Dan Pitti. I'm happy to have you all here with me today. So in this 30-minute session, I'm going to give you a small set of tips and tricks that cover most real-world Excel work. So making a sheet readable, filtering and sorting quickly, automatically flagging issues within your data sets, pulling info from multiple data sets together with the XLOOKUP formula, and summarizing your data with pivot tables. I'll also show one additional trick within Power Query, which is a slightly more advanced feature of Excel that helps deal with comma delimited lists. And by comma delimited lists, I mean situations where you have multiple values stored in the same cell, separated by a comma. This can be quite tricky to deal with if you don't know how to split apart the data and rearrange it in a way that allows for proper analysis. Finally, if we have time, I'll show how to use a combination of the index formula and the match formula to create a templated spreadsheet, which will automatically format your raw data for you so that you don't have to create the same report every semester over and over again. I've put together an Excel workbook with a few mock data sets on Love Data Week sessions for us to play around with. So let's take a look at that. As you can see on my Excel spreadsheet, I'm sure for all of you on Zoom, the text is very, very tiny right now. So the first very simple trick that I'm going to show you is just how to zoom in, and that is just hold the Control button and scroll forward on your mouse wheel, and you will make the text larger as we zoom in. You could also hold Control and scroll backwards on the mouse wheel to zoom out. All right, so the first thing that I like to do with any data set is just first examine the sheets. So you can see that we have 8 sheets here, and we're going to be focusing on these first 4 for the first half of the session. Each of these contain different information relating to Love Data Week sessions in our mock data set. Our goal is to create a single, readable, analyzable spreadsheet that contains all of the information that we need to ensure that Love Data Week is a success. So step 1 is just to make the sheets usable. And we're not at the data cleaning phase yet. This is just improving readability so that you can actually begin to do your work. Within a spreadsheet, the first thing that I like to do typically is to just bold all of my headers. So if you click row 1, it will highlight the entire row. You can hit Control and B to bold. So that is making our headers nice and visually distinct from the data set, but we still can't see our data. Our columns are currently far too small in order to fit the values that they contain. So a quick fix for this can be approached in 2 ways. The first way is to click this little triangle at the top left of your spreadsheet. That will select the entire spreadsheet. You could also click into any cell and hit Control and A, and it will also select the entire spreadsheet. Same method, or 2 different methods for accomplishing the same thing. Now that we have our worksheet selected, I want to point out these lines in between our columns and our rows. Once you have your data selected, if you double click any of these lines between either the columns or the rows, it will resize the column or row automatically so that your data fits and is readable. It's much faster than manually clicking and dragging rows and columns to resize them, especially when you have a large data set containing possibly many, many columns that you would need to resize. Um, All right, so we are making good progress on improving the readability of this spreadsheet. We can see all of the values in each cell, and our headers are visibly distinct from the data. But what happens if we scroll down? We can no longer see our headers. Now, in a very small data set like this one, that is not that big of an issue. However, if you're working with a data set with many, many columns and many, many rows, often you'll find yourself scrolling down to look at data. You won't be able to remember exactly what column you were looking at, and you'll have to scroll back up to the top of the spreadsheet in order to check. This has a very simple solution. Just got to get rid of my zoom bar that is blocking Excel. So it only takes 3 clicks to solve this problem. Click View right up here at the top of Excel, then click Freeze Panes and Freeze Top Row. Now, when we scroll down, our headers remain visible. We do not ever have to scroll up to the top of the spreadsheet to check what column we are currently looking at. All right, and now this first spreadsheet is pretty good to go in terms of just readability. So let's clean up our other spreadsheets in the same way. right, now let's hop back to our first sheet. So this sheet is our main data set for this workbook. It is a file of submissions for Love Data Week sessions. We would like to pull all of the other session details into this sheet so that we can begin analysis and kind of get an overview of everything that will be going on in Love Data Week. So to get everything into one place, we're going to utilize the XLOOKUP formula. This is an incredibly useful formula. I like to call it kind of the workhorse of any Excel user. So before we dive into the formula itself, we need to determine what fields we need to bring in to our session submission data set. So let's look at session scheduling. Here we can see that we have event date and audience size, which we do not have over here. And then we have department details, which has details about the division and college point of contact and the email of the point of contact for each department that might be participating in Love Data Week. Finally, we have a sheet of past sessions. So this shows us previous hosts. Possibly if someone is presenting for the first time, we might want to do some follow-up with them to make sure that they understand the process and that they're comfortable with what they need to do for their session. So we can start copying and pasting the columns that we would like to bring in to our session submission spreadsheet. And that is all that we need for now. And I've added this one column called First Time Presenter. We are going to use this column to check against our past session sheet to see if it is the first time that this requester is presenting for Love Data Week. So now that we have the data fields that we need set up, our column headers are there, we can dive into the XLOOKUP formula itself. So to begin, and if this is your first time kind of playing around with formulas, do not get overwhelmed. They can look a little crazy, but they break down very simply. It's just a few steps that you have to remember. So to write any formula, you'll begin by typing the equals sign. From here, we are going to type X lookup, and you can see that the formula pops up there and it gives you a description of what the formula does. Then you're going to type an open parenthesis, and you can see that this description changed to give you a few different of what we call parameters that you could enter into the formula. You can see the first one is lookup value. This is what do you want to look up in the other data set? And we want to look up our request ID. Now it is saying what lookup array. So where do we want to look this up? We want to look this up in our session scheduling table, and that is in column A. And what do we want to return? What we want to return is event date. So we will select column B. If it does not find a match, you can tell it to return whatever value that you want. So here we are just going to enter a string, open quote, and then say no match found. And then a close quote. And then if you add another comma, this is the final argument that we need to enter into this formula. It says match mode. You're pretty much always going to want to use exact match. There are niche uses where you might choose some of the other options. However, it's more complicated than the scope of this tutorial. So if we then press enter, we can see that we have a value coming through, but it says for 46,065. That is obviously not an event date, and that is because these cells are not properly formatted. So let me just extend this formula all the way down before we reformat this into a readable date. You can see when you click into this cell, there is a little kind of square here at the bottom right. If you click that and drag down, your formula will go to each of those cells. So now we can highlight those cells, right-click, and go to Format Cells, click Number, and select Date. And it will convert them to a proper date format. All right, now we're going to grab audience size, doing the same thing. So again, equals X lookup, and we are selecting our lookup value of the request ID. We are looking up request ID on this table, and we are trying to return audience size. If not found, we will have it return not found, and we are looking for an exact match of that request ID. Ah, so I have reached the point where I can no longer use my request ID, as department details does not contain that field. However, it does contain department, and each department only has one row. So they only have one possible division, one possible point of contact, and one possible email for that point of contact. Because there is only one of each of those, the department can be used as a unique ID as well. So from here, we can do an X lookup on the department of the requester. We will be looking it up here in our list of departments on department details, and we would like to return their college in column B. If not found, once again, we will just write not found, and we are looking for an exact match. All right, now that we have brought a lot of our data together, we can check if any of these presenters are, or requesters are a first-time presenter. To do that, we are going to use our first nested formula. So we're going to combine a couple of formulas in order to accomplish this. You can type equals if is number match. So I'll explain each of these formulas kind of one step at a time. If you provided a condition, so a logical test, does this equal this? And then you can specify what you want it to return. In this situation, we're trying to check if our requester exists in our list of past requesters. So is number match? Kind of have to explain this one a little bit backwards. Match will return the position that a value is in an array. So if Wolfie the Seawolf is on row 6 of our past sessions, it would return the number 6. If it doesn't exist at all, it will not return any number. So that's why we combine if is number and match. If the value, Wolfie the Seawolf, exists in our list of past presenters, then it will return a number, and that will evaluate to true because we're putting it inside of the is number formula. So, to demonstrate how exactly this works, we will look for Wolfie the Seawolf. We will look for Wolfie the Seawolf in our past host names, and we are looking for an exact match. Now we have to tell it what we want it to return if that logical test is true and if that logical test is false. If we do find Wolfie the Seawolf, we want it to return not first time. If it does find, or sorry, if it does not find Wolfie the Seawolf, we would like it to return first time presenter. There you go. So it is not Wolfie's first time. Let's see if anybody else is a first time presenter. All right, great. So we have Dr. Ada Lovelace, Professor Alan Turing, Morgan Chart, and a few other people are first-time presenters. You can easily pull that together just by using a combination of a few different formulas. And
Do you
again,
mind? Can you
with
copy and paste that into the chat?
the formula that I used,
Yeah, just so
yeah,
everybody like has it.
absolutely.
Thanks. Great.
Now, with those nested formulas, when you're combining things, it's very easy to get overwhelmed by them if you haven't really played around with formulas that much. I will say, once you break it down into a few steps, you'll start understanding it a lot better, and you'll be able to very easily see, like, what formulas can I combine to accomplish what I'm trying to do here. All right, so we have all of our data put together at this point. There is one thing that I want to point out. You can see if I click into any of these cells that all of my formulas are still here. That's really not ideal for when you are conducting your actual analysis once your data is set. If I was to send this to someone and they don't have these files that I am looking up from, all of these formulas would turn into errors. So you really want to clear these once you are done setting up your spreadsheet. There's situations where you wouldn't. I will show that later when we work on our data template. So to clear formulas, a very easy way to do that is to highlight your entire data set, hit Control and C in order to copy, and then hit Control, Shift, and V to paste as values. That will wipe out your formulas from the spreadsheet, and all of these are just the values as written now. Okay, so now that we have all of our data together, we can kind of begin exploring our data. And at first, we're just going to use filter and sort in order to do that. So I'm a member of the Career Center. Let's say I'm curious about the sessions that the Career Center specifically is doing for Love Data Week. I can click filter. This will add these little filter drop downs to each of your headers. You can click the drop-down menu and you'll see all of the possible values in the column that you have selected. If you click select all, it will deselect all, and then I'm going to click Career Center so that we filter specifically on the Career Center. All right, so we can see that the Career Center has requested to host two sessions. The requester was Wolfie the Seawolf for both sessions. One would be a workshop, one would be office hours, one is in person, one is Zoom. And this just helps us very easily view different aspects of the data, different little slices of the data. Let's say we were interested in these departments, Career Center, Biology, Athletics, and we want to see who has the most sessions or who has the single session with the most attendees. We can highlight our data set and then click the Sort button in the Data section of Excel. And we are going to sort by audience size from largest to smallest and hit OK. All right, we can now see out of these departments, athletics has the single largest session with an audience size of 45 on February 15th, 2026. And if you would like to unfilter, you can either hit clear or simply click the filter button again and it will remove your filter. One thing here, let's filter for events taking place in person. All right, so looking at this data of in-person events, we can see that we have one row that has a missing department. Now, it would have been nice to have spotted this before we even started diving into, hey, let's filter and sort the data. So one way that you can spot these issues in your data very quickly is with conditional formatting. So conditional formatting is going to highlight certain cells based on what they contain. You're going to start by highlighting your entire data set, and then you are going to click the Home button to get back to this Home section of Excel. There you will see this conditional formatting button, and it has several different options. We're only going to cover a few of them. I recommend exploring this and playing around with it. There are a lot of things you can do with conditional formatting, and it gets much more advanced if you start incorporating formulas into this, which is something that is possible. However, we're going to do some pretty simple conditional formatting. We want to highlight blank cells, and we are going to highlight them in yellow and hit OK. All right, now all of our blank cells are automatically highlighted. Let's say we also wanted to see sessions with a particularly high audience size. We could highlight our entire data set again, hit Highlight Cell Rules. Actually, let me just highlight the audience column. Highlight cell rules, greater than, and we will say that greater than 45 is a large session. And we'll choose to highlight that with green fill with dark green text. Now we can easily see our high audience sessions. Um, okay, so now that we've identified the issues in our data, we would be able to fix these. We would be able to see high audience sessions in case we need to do extra preparation for those. We can start summarizing our data at this point. So we're going to dive into pivot tables. So to work with a pivot table, highlight all of your data and then click the Insert button at the top of Excel. On the very left-hand side, you will see Pivot Table right here. You can click that and click From Table Range. You can choose to place it onto an existing workbook or a new workbook. I tend to just leave it on the default of a new worksheet, and it will create a new worksheet with your pivot table. So pivot tables are very, very useful for summarizing data. You'll see on the right-hand side here, you have a list of all of the fields or columns that you had in your data set. You can click these to bring them into the pivot table and start examining different aspects of your data. So here we can see a sum of audience size by department. And we can actually add more to this, break that down by location. So for example, we can easily see that admissions has 70 total attendees, 40 of which will be at Frey Hall and 30 of which will be at the Wang Center. We can change from department to requester, and we can see all of our online hosts and their audience sizes. And really, you can kind of use a pivot table to slice and dice your data in any way that you want in order to see what you need. Right. Okay, now here's one thing that I would like to point out. Our requester and our topics. Where are our topics? Ah, I forgot to bring in one column to our data set. Oh, past sessions. One of my columns got deleted. Apologize, guys. How can I do this quickly? Okay, so originally I had a column of topics that were separated by commas. Unfortunately, that got deleted while I was modifying my template earlier, so I will show the same example using this combination of name and email. Let me just recreate my pivot table quickly. Okay, so here we have a data field that is not set up how we would want it to be. We have name and email separated by a comma. Really, those should be two entirely different fields. So in our data, We can highlight that column and we can click text to columns. You're going to leave it on delimited and you are going to select comma. I have to wipe my formula. That will separate them out, and now we have a clean name and email. Okay. Hmm. Sorry, one of my steps got really messed up by this column being missing. All right, I will come back to that slightly later. I want to show a very useful formatting trick. First off, let me point this out here. If I insert a row above this, and let's say I wanted to give this a title called Love Data Week Session Information, and I wanted to center this across the table because it looks nicer. You could hit merge and center. A big problem with this is that it can mess up filters a little bit. You generally want to avoid merge and center. I prefer to use a feature that a lot of people do not know about called align across selection. So you will highlight where you want the text to be centered, right click it and click Format Cells, then go to Alignment. And where it says horizontal here, click this drop down and center across selections and then hit OK. This will not mess up any formulas, any filtering, any other feature of Excel. Merge cells can cause certain features to not work. They're useful, but it's just kind of, this is a better practice method. All right. Now we're going to dive in to templating a spreadsheet. So this is kind of like my favorite thing in Excel. Honestly, it will save you a ton of time, especially if you have to run the same reports frequently, just with different data sets within them. So I have my raw data dropped right here. This is another mock example of Love Data Week session information. But as you can see here, my columns are kind of in a very crazy order. It's not really very understandable how it currently is, and I have a few extra columns that I do not need. So I've created a data template here. And to do that, all I did was copy and paste the column headers that I want to keep, that I want to have formatted properly over from this raw data into my data template. Then you can see I have a crazy little formula here that I will explain in 1 second. So say we want to automatically format that raw data. You can type equals if error. This if error basically checks if the formula we are going to put inside it is an error. If it is an error, we can have it return whatever we want. If it's not an error, the formula will work properly and return the correct value. So from here, we are going to type index. Index is a formula that allows you to look at a table and tell it a row number and a column number, and it will return the value in that space. So we're going to combine this with the match formula in order to be able to dynamically pull in data from our raw data sheet, and it will always match up and things will be placed properly. So if you type if error index, we are now going to select our raw data table. We are telling this formula, this is the table that we want to look up information from. Now, if you hit comma, it is asking for a row number. This is where this formula gets a little complicated. We are going to type match. Again, match looks for a value in a column or a row, and it returns a number that is the position of that value in that column or row. So again, if we're looking for Wolfie the Seawolf, and he is on row 6 as a requester, it is going to return the number 6. So our match, what we are looking for is going to be row 2. The reason for this is we're in row 2. We just want to pull whatever is in row 2 and we're going to tell it what column we want to pull from in our next argument. So we are looking up any value on row 2 of our lookup sheet, and we are looking it up in column A of the lookup sheet. We're going to close that first match function and then add a comma, and now we are on our second match function where we are looking for a column. So we're going to type match, and now what we are looking up is our request ID. Our request ID is in row 1, and we want an exact match once again, and we're going to close that. Enter too few arguments. Value with error. What did I type wrong here? There you go. So one thing I want to point out, if I drag this to the right, it starts to not work. Things are incorrect here. You can see that. And that is because I did not lock the cell references in my formula. So if you take this formula and drag it to the right, Excel will try and adjust the columns and everything that you are looking up in the formula. We don't want it to do that for this one. So in our raw data table, the table that we are looking up from, we want this to be completely locked. To do that, you can click next to the colon in between the range and hit the F4 key. Just do that on both sides if it doesn't automatically go to both sides. This reference is now locked, so when I drag the formula, it will not change. We're going to do that also to these arrays that we are looking up for our rows and columns. And here we are looking up the row, so we do not want to lock the row number, but we do want to lock the column that we are looking up from. And here we are looking up the header, so we want to lock the row number because headers are always going to be in row 1, but we don't want to lock the column because when we drag it to the right, we want it to look up a different column header. So now that those are locked, if I drag this out, everything populates correctly. And if I drag it down, all of our data is now properly formatted. So one thing I want to point out, you guys may have noticed, I dragged my formulas way further down than our data set goes. If additional data comes in, say next year we have double the number of requests, this template will still work for this data set. It will capture things here. It is currently showing up as blank because of our if error statement. Otherwise, if we removed this, all of these would show hashtag NA because the formula is not able to look anything up and it doesn't know what to display there. So just to show how this works, we're going to wipe out our
And can you
data
throw
set.
that in the chat too? Now that it's
Yes,
written.
absolutely.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, so just to show how this data template works, we're going to wipe out our raw data. So now you can see it's completely blank. I have a second set of raw data here that we're just going to copy and dump into that spot. And our data is automatically formatted. We don't have to do anything else. So for any report where you're going to be downloading a raw CSV or anything like that, and you need to format it in a certain way, include only certain columns. This is extremely, extremely useful. It saves a ton of time. You shouldn't have to manually recreate spreadsheets constantly. All right. Oh, thank God, I have a delimited list of topics here. This is perfect. I can get right back to what I was missing before. Okay, so here in topics, you can see that we have values separated by commas, resume, interviewing, LinkedIn. And if we were to try to make a pivot table on this and get a sum of the attendees at each topic, it is not going to work. And the reason for that is that these different topics are combined. Career exploration and grad school are two categories. They should not be having their count put together like that. So, where was that guy? Data
And
talent.
I'm not sure if it's just me, but it looks like your screen's not moving. Is it just me? I
Oh,
don't
I'm
know.
not sure. Anybody else? Give me a thumbs up if things
If
are
it's just me,
happening.
I'll ignore it,
I'll
but
type test right now.
mine's
How'd
like
that work? Good.
stuck. Can everybody else see that?
No, I'm
Not showing
frozen.
up?
My screen's
Oh
frozen.
no. I'm frozen,
No.
guys.
Okay, I thought it was just yeah, I was ignoring it for a little bit. And then I'm like,
Maybe let me stop my share
okay.
and then I will reshare. It says oh, there you go. Resume. It says my screen sharing is paused. However, I'm hitting the resume button and it is not resuming.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Let me see if there's anything I could do on my end.
Hmm.
Is it because the Zoom session technically ended?
Oh, did we
That's
go over
possible. I'm
time?
overtime, yes.
Oh,
This was the
sorry, I
extra
didn't even
part.
realize we were over time.
Yep. This was the extra part. Okay, so I will say this. I think I can somewhat explain this without actually showing it to you guys. In order to analyze that data, when you have multiple values separated by commas in a cell, really what you have to do is get each of those values to be on its own row. So you can't just use that text to columns feature that I showed you earlier to do that. That will split them out into different columns, but you would still need to pivot the data so that each topic has one row. Um, you guys can still see my frozen screen, correct? Not at all. Okay,
No.
Yeah, we just
gotcha.
see black now.
Yeah, so if
All
you
right.
could stop sharing, then actually that would be better. Then we can just look at you and the
Yeah, there
person.
we go. Okay. All right. So in this example, wish you guys could see it, but let's say we have our row of Wolfie the Seawolf is a requester, and he has selected that he is going to present three topics: resume, interviewing, and LinkedIn. Currently, it's all in one row, and his topics are listed out in one cell: resume, comma, interviewing, comma, LinkedIn. The way it needs to be set up in order to actually do analysis on it, you would like that to have three rows, one for each topic that Wolfie is presenting. Um, there is a feature in Excel called Power Query that really helps with doing this. To get to it, it is in the Data tab, and it is the Get Data button all the way on the left. So you will highlight your data set, you will click Get Data, and then click, actually from text to CSV is the faster way to get there. One less button click. That is directly to the right of the Get Data button. That is going to load up Power Query. Oh, what's going on here? Sorry, from table range, not from text CSV. From table range, make sure that my table has headers is checked off at the bottom there, and then click OK. That is going to open up Power Query. You can then highlight your column with those delimited cells, click Transform, go to Split Column, click By Delimiter, and this Split Column by Delimiter pop-up is going to appear. Our delimiter is a comma. We're not going to change that, and we do want to split at each occurrence of the delimiter. If you have this open, you'll see this little Advanced Options section that you can click to expand. Once you click that, you'll see an
Dan,
option. Yes.
we're over time, but Julie did a really good session on this, and I know they're going to record everything.
Okay.
So
That's fine
you could
then.
definitely look at Julie's session on Power Query and get all this info.
Okay.
Let me know, and I'll forward you the slides. But yeah, I don't want to hold everybody up. I know we're like really over time.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. Yeah, so we've covered everything that I had for today. If you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me about specifics or any specific questions you have about Excel. Happy to give pointers on that. Thank you all for joining me today.